Yo, what up guys, Travic here. Today I want to spend some time talking about the Twister Tornado build. A lot of you guys have reached out with a billion different questions, so I figure let's take today's video and spend a little bit of time going over some of the absolute basic questions. The first and foremost thing is, why are we playing Deadeye, and can I play other Ascendancies doing this build? First and foremost, we're playing Deadeye because simply due to the fact that Gathering Winds giving us Tailwind is absolutely completely bonkers. It just gives us more movement speed and more everything. Called Shot allows us to generate all of those charges, which we're going to talk about how to do charge generation shortly. And Avidity gives you more power over your charges, and we get double charge damage. So essentially we're playing Deadeye simply due to the fact that we get to move faster, we get to generate a ton of passive charges, we get to double the amount of charges that we get, and we get double the effective charges. But players keep saying, hey man, can I play Huntress? Can I play it as Gemling? What's the big difference? Can I do it as a monk? Yes, you can do them as all of the Ascendancies on the right side of the tree. They will all work out really well. I've played this character as a Gemling. I've tried it out as a Deadeye. I have a buddy who played it as a Chayula monk. Essentially, it's always the same thing. You cut and paste skill tree and skills into the Ascendancy that you want, making changes how you see fit to your playstyle. But if you want to play it as a Huntress, you can indeed just take this passive tree and copy and paste it onto your Huntress, onto your Gemling, onto whatever right side of the tree build that you're playing. I don't know if I would like click Titan and then try to take the exact tree and stick it on a Titan, but you can indeed play this character on a wide variety of different things. So that's the first thing that I want to, talk about. The second thing is, a lot of people, when they start putting this character together, they have some problems with the movement. The movement in itself, they are unable to move constantly. They don't know how to, be able to just hold right click. So let's talk about that. If you're playing on WASD, you can set your Whirling Slash to right click and you can hold right click indefinitely. If you're playing on keyboard and mouse, it starts to get a little wonky because you have your mouse. If you're playing on keyboard and mouse, it starts to get a little wonky. You have your left click to move around, as you see my hand is off the keyboard, and you have your right click, which starts doing the Whirling Slash, and then it randomly stops. So I get this question a lot, like, hey man, my Whirling Slash randomly stops. It doesn't do it like yours does. What can I do? If you're a keyboard and mouse enjoyer, you can hold left click to start walking and then hold right click, and you'll be able to perform the absolute same movement and moving skills that you see anybody else play without any problems at all. But you have to have move only on left click, and then you hold right click, and then you're able to just kind of do whatever you want. Now, going forward with that, players say, hey man, even when I do have absolute perfect control, my character sometimes will whirlwind in place, or if I move my mouse off an enemy, it'll still go back to that enemy. There is something in Path of Exile 2 called name locking, where your cursor will lock onto a character, or your character will lock onto an enemy and try to kill it. And one of the ways that we've seen to get around this is to click target ground. Now, this isn't the permanent fix, this isn't the best fix, but it is something that you can do, that you can just have control over your character, because your character will move towards where your cursor is and not the enemy. If you ever see yourself name locked on an enemy, like for example, if this Spectre race flag, if I'm stuck trying to kill this race flag, just let go for 1 second, move, literally let go of right click and re-hold right click, and your character will start moving all over the place again. You don't need to continuously hold right click. I understand it's for movement, and I understand that makes things a lot easier. But if you just let go of right click for literally 1 second, it'll start to feel a lot better. Now, the next major question that I always get is, alongside Deadeye, is how do we generate charges? How are you generating charges? What's the kicker? First and foremost, because we're playing Deadeye, you see we are able to actually, I'm going to change this to Spear Stab, we're able to generate automatic charges by killing the mobs with frenzy charges. So what that means is, while playing Deadeye, you'll see every so often we'll have called shots will apply a mark, and that mark will automatically go on an enemy, and then that mark will transfer to other enemies. So I deal too much damage right now to showcase the mark transferring. I'm trying to do it in an easier zone. So let's see if I can go here and kill this. No, it just happens. Okay. It'll probably be easier to showcase in a map. But essentially what happens is called shots will mark an enemy and those marks will move to other enemies. So as long as I get near an enemy, see if I can do it again. As long as I get near an enemy, you see called shots automatically targets that enemy and moves it right over for us and gives them, you know, gives it what we want it to have on it. Now, if I kill it, oh, you see, it moved the mark. It moved the mark to something else. Let's see. Do I have spear throw? I have spear throw. This might work. See, it moves the mark, and then we do it again, and it will move the mark again. And the reason why moving the mark and generating the mark is so important is Sniper's Mark. Sniper's Mark says consume the mark to deal extra damage and grant you a frenzy charge. So one of the ways that it's really easy to generate charges is that Sniper's Mark, like if I expel these charges really quick, like I expelled them, now Sniper's Mark will apply to an enemy and I hit and consume this mark on the enemy before it runs out. If I consume the mark with a crit, I think it's with a crit, right? Is it with a crit? Yep, if you consume this mark with a crit, it will automatically generate you charges. Now it's trying to spear throw on that, so it's not generating the charges because we're not critting. But if I do that, okay, my spear throw doesn't want to crit. Unbelievable. But if you, anyways, if you consume the crit, if you consume the charge with a crit, you see you generate charges. You just have to crit the mob to generate the charges, and then when you generate the charges, that's how you do it. Another way to generate charges that a lot of people don't realize is we have access on our weapon set 2 to Combat Frenzy. Combat Frenzy says that you have a 10% chance when to gain a charge, or you have a chance to gain a charge. Is it when you gain a charge whenever you freeze, electrocute, or pin, and then you have a 10% chance to gain an additional charge. So what happens is while we're fighting the enemies, as long as Combat Frenzy is active and we freeze or electrocute an enemy, it will generate us charges. And you can see that when we cast, everything just explodes here, and everything inside of maps will just explode too. But we are able to kill the enemy, and then you can see our frenzy charges are resetting. We'll just expel that really quick. And then you see we generate charges because we have Combat Frenzy up. And Combat Frenzy, because we are freezing and electrocuting, allows us to generate charges as well. Let's go back to the hideout, and I'll be able to showcase and explain just a little bit more about what I mean and what is going on. So essentially what happens is we have this nice little wombo combo. We have Sniper's Mark that we have automatically casting thanks to called shots, which is casting our Sniper's Mark and giving us charges. And we have access to Combat Frenzy, which you see is off right now, and then when I weapon swap, it goes on immediately. Now we're gaining our ability to freeze and electrocute from 2 sources. First and foremost, we have cold damage on our rings. Both rings have cold damage. We have cold damage from our slappy stick, and we have cold damage runes inside of our Tangle Tongue. All of this cold damage allows us to build up a lot of freeze chance very, very, very fast and freeze a lot of enemies, generating charges. Essentially, we hit the enemies so hard with so much cold that white-tiered mobs blow up immediately and they generate us charges. So that's essentially what's going on. The second way, like I had mentioned, is being electrocuting monsters, and we are doing that with our Herald of Thunder. And Herald of Thunder is giving us the ability to pretty much every time we shock an enemy, Herald of Thunder turns on. Herald of Thunder procs a big bolt of lightning from the sky. That bolt of lightning comes down and hits the enemy. That shocks and electrocutes the enemies, and it helps build up more charges. So we have 3 sources of charges. Now, if you're not playing a Deadeye and you are playing a Huntress or a Monk, you will be able to generate charges using Combat Frenzy without any problem at all. And it'll take a while for it to start to work and be flawless. Combat Frenzy is a little janky during the campaign, which is why we use Sniper's Mark. Combat Frenzy, as you start to level up and progress and get your character more damage and more gear, will start to be smoother and nicer to go along. Now, if you're playing a Huntress or a Monk and you still want to generate charges and you want to use the Sniper's Mark tech, you can indeed manually cast Sniper's Mark. I've actually gotten to the point where I'm probably going to use this last slot here to put in another base Sniper's Mark so that if I am bossing, I can just target the boss manually alongside of called shots to constantly generate charges at will, because casting Sniper's Mark, while it sucks to press another button, is a fantastic way to generate your charges. So, you know, just a quick recap. Sniper's Mark generates you charges, and you can generate charges using combat frenzies. Now, I've had a lot of players say, but isn't there a way that you can passively generate charges? How do I just generate charges passively? There's got to be something that I can do. I don't understand. I've seen other players doing it. Well, there is another way to generate charges. It's a little janky, but it is doable. You can actually get this Valakos Roar Topaz gem. Now, this thing is pretty cheap. It shouldn't be too expensive at all. If I come over here and I search this up, you can see you could get them for like a Val Orb. What this does is it's a charm that says whenever you take lightning damage, generate a frenzy charge. So as long as you have charm slots that you're not using, like currently my charm setup is set up to run Delirium, but if I wasn't running specifically Simulacrums, I have this charm in, and it is another way to passively generate frenzy charges when it gets used, because there's a lot of lightning damage in the game. So you can just socket this in somewhere, and every time you take a hit from lightning damage, you'll automatically generate a charge. The goal would be to not get hit, but it is indeed a way to generate charges. Okay, great. Now that we've covered the Ascendancies and we've covered the generate charges, let's talk about the skill and what's going on with the skill. First and foremost, Tornado is a skill that will be casted and benefits from a couple of different things. If I cast my Tornado normally, you'll notice that the tornadoes are dead tornadoes, we'll call them for the sake of the video. These are dead tornadoes. These are tornadoes that are not empowered. They look a little strange. They don't really do anything. When I empower my tornadoes with something like an ailment on the ground, my tornadoes take in that ailment, and you can see visually they become a little bit more powerful and they obtain the ailment that's on the ground. So what this means is that if you're standing on shot ground, like you see right there, and you cast your tornadoes or your twisters, they will pick up the element from the ground. The same goes for fire, and the same goes for cold. Now, you can get a different pair of boots that allow you to make fire tornadoes. I think the lightning boots are better, but there are fire boots as well. Unfortunately, there are no cold boots. So to generate cold tornadoes, you would have to do an area with chilled ground. Now we've established that our tornadoes can, or our twisters can get impacted by being on chilled ground or ignited ground or, you know, shocked ground, and that's step one. So you can see them, they're empowered. Step two is we use Whirling Slash not just for movement, but we use Whirling Slash as a way to empower our twisters. So you can see our twisters become heavily empowered. No Whirling Slash, I cast my twisters, they're very small. Whirling Slash one time, I cast my twisters, they're a little bit bigger. Whirling Slash 3 times, I cast them, they're huge. You can actually stack up Whirling Slash 3 times. So if we go 1, 2, cast, you see they're nice and big. We go 1, 2, 3, now it's a massive twister, and now we get these huge, beautiful tornadoes. If I do this and cast, and then cast again, and then do this, these tornadoes will try to consume the twister that's on me. So if I cast, and then do this, these twisters will consume. So you always want to make sure that you're casting your twister while you're at max Whirling Slash charges to get the most benefit. Because if I cast like this, and then I do this, and then I cast like this, those are less, and then these are less, and it just becomes less damage and less damage and less damage. So you always want to make sure that you take a second to cast, and then attack. Now, if I generate my Whirling Slashes and then I dodge roll, I will use up the Whirling Slash will be gone. Whirling Slash only stays where it stays as long as we're inside of the Whirling Slash. If I move out of the Whirling Slash, it is gone. So if you ever do one of these and then you do this and then you cast, you're going to notice that your twisters are going to be really bad. On top of that, we use Barrage. Barrage is another way that we can enhance our twisters. So you see every time I do this and I cast, I have a nice amount of twisters. And the reason why Barrage is so impactful is whenever we press Barrage, while we have max Whirling Slash, Barrage allows us to cast way more twisters. So let's take a look at that again. Let's wait for these to dissipate. So this is Twister on 3 salvo. We see we have a nice amount of twisters. We'll get our Whirling Slash going. We'll cast again. We see 7, 8 twisters. We'll just call it 8. I get up my Whirling Slash, I get out my Barrage, I cast my Barrage, I Whirling Slash, and we see it's automatically double twisters. Barrage works really well with giving us double, like almost double damage because it's double the amount of twisters. Barrage also consumes all of our frenzy charges, which gives us even more damage. So if you're just saying doing this and then you roll and then you do this without barrage, you deal less damage. If you do this and you cast barrage and you don't have charges, you deal less damage. All of it kind of works together to make this overwhelming amount of damage that a lot of players aren't realizing. So make sure that you do that. And this is one of the reasons why that Deadeye is such an important aspect to being this Ascendancy, because without called shots, it becomes a little awkward with generating charges, and you got to do some shenanigans, or you have to sniper's mark, or you have to automate sniper's mark, or you have to like, you know, cast it yourself or freeze or electrocute. So it becomes a little awkward. So you want to make sure that you give yourself the best opportunity to generate charges and have them erupt. Moving down the list, a lot of people say to me, I don't understand how my damage falls off, especially after the campaign when I get to maps. How do I fix my damage? What do I do? I have the same gear as you. First and foremost, a great way to fix your damage post-campaign or towards the interlude is to get yourself a really cheap pair of gloves that have raw damage on them. So let's clear this and let's search for Hand of Wisdom in action. These gloves are relatively cheap. They're a couple exalted orbs. The reason why these gloves become so good is they give you flat lightning damage. What I mean by that is the gloves add 1 to 10 lightning damage per 20 int, and that is a base amount of damage stacked onto what you're doing. On top of that, having flat damage increases your damage on your twisters by a whole lot. So how does that work? If I take my gloves off, my damage is 18,085. If I put these gloves on with flat damage, my damage goes up to 22,000 just from the flat damage. If I take these gloves with a lot more flat damage, both fire, cold, and fizz, my damage goes to 30,000. So flat damage on your gear gives you a lot of damage. So if you had watched my previous videos and you started doing the leveling guide and stuff like that, a lot of players will be like, hey man, I have this black heart ring on, my damage falls off, what do I do? The easiest thing to do would be to open trade here, come down to the stat filter and just search for, say, fire damage. Then you have fire damage to it. Is it fire damage to attacks or is it just fire damage? Yeah, fire damage to attacks. So we go, I don't know, fire damage to attacks. And then, I don't know, say you want cold damage. So cold damage to attacks. Come over here, remove this, type item, say ring or gloves, and hit search. And you can see, you can find some pretty basic, these are bad, a lot of these are bad, so you want to make sure that you're looking for good rolls, and you can find some pretty good rolls on your rings and get some really cheap upgrades to your black hearts, or just to kind of like get you rolling. How do I know if a roll is good, or how do I know if a roll is bad when I'm looking at the trade site? Well, when you're looking at the trade site, you're going to notice on the left side here, it says P and S. P is prefix, S is suffix. There are 3 prefixes on an item and 3 suffixes on an item. The number is corresponding to the tier. So for example, P6 means this is tier 6 fire. P5 means this is tier 5 cold. The higher the P number, or the closer to 1 the P number goes, the better it is. So a really good example is if I look at my rings here, you see I have tier 2, tier 4, tier 2. It's up, you know, closer to 1. So essentially the tiering of skills goes from 1 being the best to I think it's like 10 being the worst, or however deep tiers go, whether it be 6 or 7. So you want to make sure that you find gear that has flat damage with a high tier roll within your budget. You can always upgrade them later. So a really good example is like day 4 of the league. I picked up this ring. It has tier 2 fire, tier 4 cold, and I picked this ring up for like a divine or 2. Earlier today, I made a ring, and it's a little bit better than that, and I made a ring like this that has double damage to attacks, bajillions of resistances, and this ring's going to be a little bit more expensive, so you have to find something that's within your budget. You can find cheap resistances, and you can find cheap damage for very cheap to get your build started. So if your damage starts to fall off, make sure that you're spending the time to look for those flat damage modifiers on gear. They don't need to be the highest of tier to get rolling, but they need to be high enough to produce a certain amount of damage. So just something to keep in mind. So if your damage starts to fall off, flat damage is completely king. And like I said, you can get these gloves, and these gloves will be a massive starting point. So if I take off these really quick, just to showcase to you. Oh, am I missing dex? Okay, so I have to put this on because I'm missing dex. So if you look at my damage is 10,000 or 11,000 and change. Just waiting for all of my buffs to kick in. So I'm at 13.7. If I just put these gloves on, I gain 5,000 damage just because of the flat damage. If I put these gloves on, I gain 10,000 because of the flat damage. If I put this ring on, I gain 5,000 because of the flat damage. Flat damage is going to be massive. So that's that. The next question I get a lot of is, why do we have 2 weapons? How does that work? First and foremost, Sky Sliver is not a damaging based weapon. It is only 100% of the time used for your attack speed. Your attack speed is king. What does this mean? That means that the attack speed on this weapon will be the attack speed that our Whirling Slash is. So you can see my attack speed here. We're going to take this off because this is attack speed to get a better representation. This is my attack speed with Sky Sliver. If I use a non-Sky Sliver weapon, my attack speed becomes a lot less. Once again, Sky Sliver for attack speed, you can see, non-Sky Sliver for attack speed. Essentially, what we want to do is we want to have our weapon in our main hand have as much attack speed as possible for 2 very specific reasons. First and foremost, we are using Dance with Death, and that says 25% more skill speed while your offhand is empty. So we have this in our main hand and our offhand is empty. And second off, our Whirling Slash has Rigwall's Ferocity on it. And this said supported skills have 20% more attack speed if used in weapon set 1. So as long as we have a weapon in weapon set 1, which is this one up here with no offhand, we get a bunch of attack speed here and a bunch of skill speed here that makes us really fast. Now, if you don't believe me, let's just see. So this is my attack speed right now without my gloves on. If I put an offhand on, this becomes my attack speed. It's a lot slower. And if I take this off, my attack speed goes down to an absolute crawl. So your attack speed will skyrocket based upon you doing all of the things to put your attack speed back to where it needs to be so that you can start moving very, very fast. The second thing is, because we're using 2 weapon sets, we get to make use of something called weapon skill sets. What this does is, this allows us to, at any given point, and you can see it right there, turn on and off nodes depending on the weapon that we're using. So we have weapon set 1 being these red ones and weapon set 2 being these green ones. And you'll notice a lot of it in the mobilytics listed down below, where you will set up your tree to have weapon set swaps. And you can see them down over here changing too, where depending on the weapon that we're on, so if we're on Sky Sliver, we have all the movement. And when we go to Tangle Tongue, we have all of the damage. And the same thing happens up here as well. We're on Tangle Tongue, we take the damage nodes over here. And we swap, we go back to the speed nodes over here. Essentially, what Grinding Gear Games has allowed us to do, it has allowed us to use our skills and weapon swap on the fly without delay. So essentially, we get to use all of our abilities on a weapon swap and not really have to worry about the delay of pulling the weapon out to start doing damage. So we want to make sure that we set up these weapon swaps. To set up the weapon swaps, you need these weapon set points. You get 24 of them throughout the campaign, and they're located all throughout the campaign. And as you complete the, the story and stuff, you'll unlock the points. Now, how do they work? How do you put them in? So let's just take all of these out really quick, and we can showcase how they work and what is going on. Just take all this out. So to allocate weapon skill sets, you need to make sure that you have skill points available. When you have skill points available, you select the weapon set that you want to allocate points for. So weapon set 1 we do here, and then you'll notice that it still says 11 points there. And then weapon set 2, we just come here and we do this, and then you'll notice it's going to start using points there. Essentially what happens is our total number of skill points is how many weapon set points we have left. So if I do this, it's going to go 7, 6, and then this number doesn't change because we still have weapon set 1 to do. So what does that mean? That means if I do this, and I remove these, you're going to notice that this number is going to go to 7, right? See how this number is 7? If I do this, it goes 6, it goes 5, it goes 4. Now this all matches and lines up. And now I have 8 more points to use around. And if I do this, it starts using those points up because I have 8 total points left, and I can split them 4 and 4. I know it's a little confusing. I get it's a little confusing, but you see if I do this, right now I have no skill points left and I can't use my weapon set points anymore. So if I take these out, I can have my weapon set points again. Same thing here. So your weapon set, you can use an equal number of weapon set points. So I have 4 points here used up and 7 here. So I can spend 3 here before I need to start doing anything. So See? So I can go 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and then that spends that. And then I have 8 points left, and then I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now I can't use them. When should you do the weapon sets, and when should you set up the weapon sets if you're leveling this build? Act 4, the end of Act 4, the interludes. You really don't want to start doing weapon set shenanigans, especially playing Twisters, until you have a lot of the weapon points and the points set up to do things. So it's just something for later on. In order of like leveling, I would definitely just take, if you're starting from Ranger, I would come straight down to Dance with Death and Acceleration and this whole wheel here. I put all the points in later, and then later on when you get to Act 5, I would start doing weapon set shenanigans. Now, weapon sets can be allocated by clicking this little arrow here and coming down here with use weapon sets. If I have this on use on weapon set 1 and 2, it will use it on weapon set 1 and 2, depending on which weapon that I have active. So you can see the weapon, it's slow as shit. And then if I put my regular weapon on, it's fast. Now, if I click only weapon set 2, it will automatically change it to weapon set 2. If I change it to weapon set 1, it'll automatically use it on weapon set 1. So you want to make sure that you use the right skills on the right weapon set. In this build, we are using movement on 1 and damage on 2. So what does that mean? That means Whirling Slash is our movement skill. It is used on weapon set 1. Twister is our damage skill. It is used on weapon set 2. Barrage is our damage skill, but it doesn't matter because Barrage is universal, so we use it on both weapon set 1 and 2. In terms of staying alive and not dying, because we're moving around the map, we want to make sure that we always have our auras up and running that are defensive. So defensive auras like Wind Dancer and Ghost Dancer, we will have on both weapon set 1 and 2 because we want to make sure that we have them up at all times. Now in weapon set 1, we don't have extra spirit because we want to leave our offhand empty so we gain the most amount of movement speed. Because of that, when we change to weapon set 2, we gain a whole bunch of spirit, and that allows us to use a bunch of extra buffs. And that's why Combat Frenzy, Herald of Ice, and Herald of Thunder are only on weapon set 2 because we don't have the spirit for weapon set 1. So recapping, movement on weapon set 1, damage on weapon set 2, defenses on weapon set 1 and 2, offensive auras on weapon set 2. It kind of starts to make sense as you play the character and you're like doing the thing. You know what I mean? Like you'll start playing, you'll start seeing things. But that's really a lot of it. The other really big question that I get is, why are we using the amulet that we're using? Is it really worth it? Yoke of Suffering is a really interesting choice. I've seen a lot of people using it. Yoke of Suffering is pretty cheap in terms of things. At least it was cheap when I bought it. Let's just try this again. Yoke of Suffering. Yoke of Suffering is a 20 exalt, depending on the rules that you get, answer to a bajillion of damage. Because we deal fire, lightning, and cold damage, we have all 3 elements, and all 3 elements plus the amulet gives you a ton of extra damage and kind of just does its thing. A lot of people say, hey man, your amulet has this, you know, vulgar methods on it or this thing. How do I do that on my amulet? Well, if your amulet is off and you have these distills, you can right click on these distills and put your item in here and pretty much just use the different colors to anoint your amulet with whatever you want. If you're looking for specifically, say, vulgar methods, which I don't actually know where vulgar methods is, it's over here. You can hold Alt on the tree here, and this will show you the colors that you need, and then you can go to trade and you can buy the colors. It says Liquid Emotions, Ire, Guilt, and Despair. You come on over here to Angie, and then you just search what you're looking for, Ire, Despair, and then you buy them, and then you right click them in your inventory, and they will, I'll bring up this window like I had showed you. You put your amulet in, and the 3 in the order it tells you they go in, and you hit instill, and it puts it on your amulet. But, you know, that's it. As far as everything else goes, if you guys have more questions about the build, this video went a little bit longer than I wanted to, but I wanted to try to address a lot of the basics. If you guys are still stuck or still confused, we can definitely 100% make a part 2. I'd be more than happy to answer more questions about the build, get you guys up and running so that you have no problems at all. But for now, I'm gonna get this video to you guys, and if you have problems, leave a comment down below. I'll compile all your questions again, and I'll try to get on another video for you guys. But for now, friends, enjoy playing your Deadeye, Whirling Slash, Huntress Monk, Gemling Twister, and I'll see you all in the next one.